This is the last week of our series, Daniel. It's a 6-week series, and to finish it up, it's going to be pretty deep, and we're going to go into a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, look at your notes right now. If you've got notes, those are very little compared to what I'm going to go through. We're going to go through really, the book of Daniel is an amazing book. It's a prophetic book, which talks about the end times, and we're going to dive into really the end times. How's this all going to end? What it's going to be like? We don't know exactly all the details, but Daniel and the book of Revelation, which we'll break down some, are going to show us a ton. So who's ready to go deep? Anybody ready to go deep? Okay, if you're not, you're going deep anyway. So here we go. Let's do this together. I tried to make it as simple as possible, and I can't cover everything. And some of you may disagree with this, depending on your theology. It'll all be okay. We'll end up at the same place at the end. Here we go. Matthew chapter 24. Verse 3. Now, this is Jesus. I encourage you to go read the whole chapter, Matthew 24, because it's Jesus talking about the end times. It is him focusing and talking about the end times. Matthew chapter 20, verse 3, it says, "As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, and they said, 'Tell us, when will this all happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of this age?'" When is the end going to come? What is the end going to look like? Tell us about the end times. And here's what I'll say. Even Jesus would say, "I don't know the time when this is going to happen." God knows I don't know the time when this is all going to happen. And so we're going to go into this. What does it look like? What does the end times look like? And I, just to be really transparent, have never preached on the end times before. Never have. Can I tell you why? Because I believe we should live every day like it's the end time. I believe that should be it. But if Jesus talked about it, which he did, if there's a whole book in the Bible about it, which there is, I got kind of convicted by God reading the book of Daniel, which over half of Daniel is prophetic, really focusing on the end times. It's probably pretty important. And so I started, saying, okay, this is important. I also didn't preach on it a lot because I've heard other people preach on it and say, hey, this is the end, this is the end, this is the end. And then it didn't happen. I'm like, well, that was lame. Who remembers, maybe you may not, you may be too young for this, in the year 2000, when it was when it just from 1999 to 2000, someone even wrote a book. I couldn't remember the name of the book. It was like either 2000 Reasons Why Jesus Will Return in the year 2000. And that book sold like crazy. I didn't buy it, but people bought this book about Jesus returning in the year 2000. We were youth pastors at that time. So, December 31st, 1999, we had a lock-in at our church. And there were parents who came up and told me before that, my kids won't be there for the lock-in because we believe the rapture is going to happen, when the time comes, when it turns over to 2000, and we want to be raptured up together as a family. And I said, oh, you're whatever. I said, and I remember saying, I'm pretty sure he's not going to come back at that time because people have been saying that's the time. And he's going to come, at a time when no one's not, you may have an idea, but you're not going to know the exact day. And so, I heard people preach about that, and you heard it for a long time. I'm like, but if you go through and study it, it is very, very deep how Daniel goes. Go ahead and look at Matthew chapter 24, verse 12. Jesus talking some more. He talked about many signs that would happen. There's so many signs that are out there. And here's what I'll say. We live at a time where the signs, I would venture to say, more than any other time in history, I think all the signs that Jesus said we're living in the middle of all, like it's set up. It is set up for there to be a time for us right now. If you look there, Matthew chapter 24, verse 12, it says, because of the increase of wickedness, who would agree our world has an increase of wickedness? I believe that's cyclical, though. I believe the world goes through times where things are real bad, and then it gets better. I believe right now it's at a pretty high level. And it says, the love of most will grow cold. We live in a world where, and I would say this is the problem in the church. If you look in the book of Revelation, Jesus addresses this. I would rather you be hot or cold, not lukewarm. I'll spit you out of my mouth. And I think even the church world has become cold, very much so. It says, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached to the whole world. Okay, this is one of the signs. And I think this is the one that in times past, like if you went before, during World War II, I was reading something about this. During World War II, churches everywhere thought it was the end times. They thought it was the end times. And they said that, Hitler was the Antichrist. That was true. They thought this is the end. Church's pastor got up and preached that Hitler was the Antichrist, and they went up and they preached all these different things, and he was evil. I agree with that. But they pointed toward that. The problem with that at that time was the gospel hadn't been preached to the whole world. Here's what I would challenge and I would say. We are either at that point today or getting very close to that point to where the gospel has went to the whole world. People are like, well, I've read before that there are so many people groups that haven't been reached. Here's my challenge to that. Here's what's changed the ball game. Technology. Technology has changed everything. If you go to every country in the world, they all have phones. Now, everyone doesn't necessarily have a phone, but they have phones. What can you get on a phone? Technology. People are watching right now. Hey, I'm going to wave at you. They're watching right now live. They're not here in this building. They're not here in our city. They're in other states and some even in other countries. And they're watching right now. Why? Because of technology. And technology used to, before people want to start a Bible school in a country, you know what you had to have? You had to have teachers. You had to have all the equipment. You had to be able to go and get plane tickets and a building. Do you know all you need now to attend Bible school in another country? This. You just need a phone or you need a device to be able to say, hey, I can do this. The gospel is reaching and get to this point where it's reaching every people group and it's going to spread. Because, okay, you're like, well, everyone's not saved. It didn't say every people group's going to be saved. It said the gospel will reach them. And what happens? One person can get saved in that people group and it spreads throughout the whole group. And we are at this place. We are at this place where it is set up to have the whole world hear the gospel at a faster pace than ever before. Everybody grab that. So we live in who would agree we live in a different world than 10 years ago? 10 years ago, it's a totally different world, and technology is changing things every few months. Things are changing. Because of the world that we live in, things are changing like crazy. Let's go ahead and keep going. It says, as a testimony to all the nations, then the end will come. It says, the kingdom will be preached to the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end, one of those major signs, the gospel going to the whole world. Then the end will come. So when you see, standing in the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation. Okay, who's with me? When you first read that, like, what in the world is that? What is this abomination that causes desolation? We're going to go to it even deeper than that. Many theologians believe it's this. And we're going to go through and study this. There will be a time frame, and you can see it in the book of Revelation, which we'll talk about, where there's a 7-year period called the Tribulation, 7-year period. And that during that time, at about the 3.5-year part of that 7 years, that there will be set up in the temple in Jerusalem, there will be set up a statue of the Antichrist, which will be known as the abomination of desolation. That's what it is known as, and you can see that in Jesus talking about this. It says this will be set up, and then he goes, it's spoken of through the prophet Daniel. Let the reader understand. So Jesus is quoting the book of Daniel. He's quoting the book of Daniel saying, this is what is going to come to happen and come to pass from the book of Daniel. Okay. We're just getting started. I was studying the book of Daniel. You want to talk about deep times deep. It is like insanely deep. And then you start going into, I literally, when I read it this week and in weeks to come, for this message, I probably spent over 40, 45, 50 hours just studying this. And I feel like I could spend another 50 to 100 studying it because of the depth of what it is. And so we're going to look at this and look at what are some things Daniel said. Daniel prophesied. Look there in Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9, he says this. He says, 77s. Now, some translations refer to this as a group of 7. So 70 groups of 7. 70 groups of 7. It's really broken down to 70 groups of 7 years, which equals a total of 490 years. So he said, in a 490-year time frame, in 70 groups of 7 are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, and to bring an everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Understand, now no one understand this, from the issuing of the decree to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem. Now, let me say this. He says this. He says, understand this, from the issuing of the decree to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem. Let me tell you Daniel's setting here. Daniel is basically, he was taken, and many of the Israelites were taken as a prisoner. They were prisoners. He was a prisoner. What happened whenever the country came in and they took him over? They destroyed the temple. They took down all the walls around Jerusalem. Everything there basically was destroyed. And so Daniel goes and he basically prophesies. He says this. He says, from the issuing of this decree to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem. And he talks about that. You'll see it actually, It was restored. The walls were restored. The temple was restored. You'll study that if you look in the book of Nehemiah and Ezra. Those were the last two books written chronologically in the Old Testament. They talk about this being restored. It hadn't happened yet, but it was getting ready to happen. It says to rebuild and restore Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, come. There will be 7 sevens. Okay, what does that even mean? There will be 7 sevens. That means this. There will be 49 years. 49 years. 7 sevens. 7 sevens. 49 years. Okay, 49 years. If you study this out, he's talking, he goes, okay, in 7 sevens, the temple and the walls will be restored in 7 sevens. If you study this, not just biblically, you can go and look at history books. In 7 sevens, 49 years, the temple will be restored. Guess what happened in 49 years? It was rebuilt. 7 sevens, they came back and they started rebuilding. In history books, it'll show that they went in and they rebuilt Jerusalem and its walls in 49 years. So before it ever happens, Daniel prophesies in 49 years, boom, temple's going to be rebuilt. Walls are going to be rebuilt. What happens? 49 years, it happens. Not just in Daniel, in history you can study that. Then go and keep looking. And in 62 sevens, if you do the math, that is 434 years. 62 sevens, it will be rebuilt with the streets and a trench. But in times of trouble, after the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be cut off and will have nothing. So in 62 sevens, 434 years, guess what happens in 62 sevens? Jesus is crucified and killed. So here's what this dude Daniel does. He prophesies 2 things. In 7 sevens, 49 years, the temple will be restored, it will be rebuilt. Guess what happened? It got restored and got rebuilt. Then he prophesies again in 62 sevens. This is what will happen. The Holy One will be killed. He'll be cut off. Guess what happened? At the exact time that he prophesied it, that's what happened. Who knows? That's pretty legit. I was reading this and I was like, boom, this guy's not just saying stuff, he's saying stuff and it's coming to pass. He's not blowing smoke, he's speaking truth. And so he goes through and he does this and Jesus is crucified. Then it goes on and says, the people of the ruler who come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Okay, so he says, the city, the temple, going to be rebuilt in 49 years. What happens? It's rebuilt. He says, the Savior is going to come. The Anointed One's going to come. He's going to be killed. That's what happens exactly. Then he says, the city that was built is going to be torn down again. Guess what happened in 70 AD? It was torn down again. The temple, the walls, everything was torn down again in AD 70 that was rebuilt. It was all torn down and still to this day is torn down. Still to this day is torn down. And then he goes this. He said, the end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end. Who knows? We've lived in that. There's constantly war in our world. Even if we're not in a war, there's constantly war in our world. That's where we live. War will continue until the end. And desolations have been decreed. And he will confirm a covenant with many for the 1 7. Okay, let's go through and add this up. So he says they're going to be how many? They're going to be 490 years. If you go through and you look at it, he prophesies for 483 years. There's 1 7 left. If you look at it prophetically, do you look at what Daniel's saying? There's 1 7 left. Where do we see that 1 7? In the end times, in the tribulation, 7-year period of time that's coming to pass. So if these other things you said have happened, I mean, he's legit, I would probably believe the last one. If he goes, hey, 49 years this is going to happen, 434 years this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and it's all happened, then the last 7, it's business. So in the middle of the 7, he will put to end the sacrifice and offering, and a wing of the temple. He will set up an abomination of desolation. Okay, in this part of the temple, there's going to be set up this abomination of desolation, which we talked about. That's probably a statue of the Antichrist, which causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. Is everybody still with me? Am I going too deep? Everybody out there? I know we're going into a lot of stuff. Oh, we just started, okay? So this is just where we're going to go. Go ahead and throw that up on the screen. Throw the next slide up on the screen. We're going to go through some of the facts. Okay, 77s, 490 years of prophecy. 893 of those 490s have been fulfilled. 49 years, 7 sevens to rebuild the temple. The other ones were 434 years until Jesus dies. That leaves us with 7 years. Where do we find those 7 years at? We haven't walked through, we haven't lived those 7 years yet, but we see a picture of those 7 years in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation shows the picture of those 7 years. Here's what I'm going to do, because I could preach for months on the book of Revelation. I'm going to wrap it up in 10, break it down into 10 areas. Who's ready? Not in your notes, write this down. 10 different areas the book of Revelation talks about and hits on that we're going to look at and we're going to take a look at. Here's the first one. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. The church age. Revelation 2 and 3. You can look there. It talks about the different churches and really shows how the church is messed up. Anybody with me? Shows a lot of different deficiencies in areas of the church, areas we can improve, and we should really go through and model what we need to change in the church. But he talks about the church age. The second one he talks about, the second event that happens there is the rapture. The rapture, Revelation chapter 4, verse 1. Okay, also Revelation 4, verse 1, in the book of Revelation, that is the last time the word church is mentioned in the book of Revelation. The church is not mentioned again. Why? Because after the rapture, the church is gone. It's gone. It's gone, okay? Here's what I want to say. There is a lot of debate about the rapture. There's some people say, I don't believe in the rapture. Other people believe, well, I believe it's going to happen. Okay, and we'll get into this here in a second. They believe at different times when it's going to happen. Here's what I would say. I believe in the rapture. Can I tell you why? I want to go. Okay, I would rather go than have to go through the rest of this stuff we're getting ready to see. So who would vote on going to heaven, a great place? Oh, I want to stay here and go. No, because here's what's going to happen. The church is swept away and taken away. And look at the next part. The rapture. It's the last time the church mentioned. Number 3, the rise of the Antichrist. The rise of the Antichrist. So what happens? Now here's what many people believe. They believe that he's going to come and he's going to broker a deal. He'll have ties with Israel. And he's going to get a deal with Israel going. And Israel will go together with him. And actually, he will get this deal with them, promising them that he's going to do what? That he's going to come back in and he's going to rebuild the temple. I will make sure this temple is rebuilt. Okay, everybody look at me real quick. If you study this and find this out, there are already drawings. The drawings for the temple in Jerusalem are done. They're already done. The drawings for the temple are done. They've already been made. They are sitting there waiting for the temple to be built. Here's the other thing. All of the furniture that goes in the temple, it's already done. It's already been built. It's a proven fact. It is in storage right now, waiting for the temple to be built. All this is set up for this to happen. This is just great. I started studying this like, I never studied this before. This is insane. Everything is set up for this to happen. And what has to happen? The Antichrist comes. That's the rise of the Antichrist, where he comes in and he brokers a deal. He signs a treaty with the Israelites, and he makes a deal with them. Here's the next part, the tribulation. The tribulation, the 7 years of really horribleness, of junk and just horrible. They believe at the 3.5 year mark, what will he do? He will come in, he will put his statue up, the Antichrist will, the abomination of desolation. That's when that will happen. Many people believe it's at 3.5 years. Some are like, I think it's at 7, or I think it doesn't really matter. It's just going up and it's going to happen. So you see that next part, which is the tribulation. Here's number 5. I like this one. Woo! The second coming of Christ. It's where Jesus comes back. Jesus comes back, kicks the devil and the Antichrist in the tail, just kicks him in the tail. The Bible says he casts them into a bottomless pit. Woo! You lost. And they go down there. That's where they go. What happens right after he does that, right after the second coming of Christ? The marriage supper of the Lamb. I like this. Here's what I'm saying. So he comes, he kicks the devil, the Antichrist, woo, bottomless pit. Then he does what? Partay. He says, now we're having a party. The marriage supper of the Lamb, we're having a party. And here's what I believe. It's all going to be good food. I'm believing for pecan pie. Woo! That's healthy. Not going to put extra calories on you. It's going to be good. It's going to be awesome. Who's with me on pecan pie? Anybody like pecan pie? If you don't, get saved. You're going to miss out on the rapture if you don't believe it and love it. But you have this where all of a sudden he has this and he has a party. He has this party. Then you have this thing called the Millennium or the millennial reign, which is a 1,000-year reign. Now, let me say this. It's a 1,000-year reign of Christ on the earth, of him on the earth. Okay? You're like, well, what's going to be different? There's no sin on the earth. It is a perfect place. It is like awesome. It's okay, imagine this. No traffic. No stupid people driving bad. That irritates you. It's the perfect place. So for 1,000 years, there's 1,000 years of Christ reigning here on this earth. And like a new earth, it's amazing. I'm talking about a new heaven and a new earth. Then here's what happens next that I don't really understand why, but I'm not in charge. God is. The last rebellion. Sounds like a Star Wars movie. It does. Sounds like a Star Wars movie. I thought that when I wrote that down. The last rebellion, which what happens? After the 1,000-year reign of Christ, for some reason, and I'll tell you why many theologians believe, the devil comes back on the earth. Many theologians believe because that is the place and time where those who are during the millennial reign, the people who are born, they will get a chance to make a choice. They get a chance to make a choice then. And so he comes back after that is over. The great white throne judgment, he's cast, the devil's cast forever in the pit, never to be a part again. He's done. And then number 10, I love number 10, eternity. Eternity with what? Eternity with a new heaven and a new earth. Brand new. A place where we live forever. So if you break that down, you break down, that time frame and what the book of Revelation is really simply broke down. You can go so much deeper. You can go into so much more, and you can have so many arguments. The book of Revelations is a great place to argue, which really does no good to argue. But it's this place where we see prophetic come to pass. And it's also where we see what? That last seven. That last seven. And here's what I would say. Everything is set up for that last seven to happen. Now, when you mention things like that, people get scared. Here's what I'd say. If you're scared by the last seven, you need to get your heart right. Because the last seven shouldn't be a scary thing. The last seven should be, whoa, that means, okay, if you're a pre-trib person, what does that mean? That means I believe the rapture is going to come before it all happens. That's what I'm voting for. Anybody with me? Mid-trib, it comes at halfway, or post-trib. That would be the worst one, like at the end. I'm all for let's let it happen early. Let's let it happen. Let's get out of here. But we're set up for all this to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying we should live every day like it's our last. We should live every day with that kind of passion. So what do we get out of this? Look in Daniel chapter 12. We're still going, not done. I'm just on my second page of the notes. Okay. I have never before had 2 pages of notes. So this is awesome, maybe. Okay, it made me nervous. I'm like, I've never done this. Okay, Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. Closing it up, last chapter. It says, at that time, Michael, the archangel, the tough one, comes and the great prince who protects your people will arise. And there will be a time of distress, such as has not happened from the beginning of the nations. I believe that's the time. Once again, look at this in Daniel chapter 12. It's like repainting what you see in the book of Revelation. They believe that time, the time of distress, is the time of the great tribulation. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. What time is that? The rapture. That's where many people believe the rapture comes from. It says, multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake and come to everlasting life. Others will be put to shame and everlasting contempt. What is that? The great white throne judgment. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness, the stars forever and ever. I want to read that again. Those who are wise, what is that? Those who are following Christ, those who are given to God, those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness, the stars forever and ever. Let me say this. This is who we are called to be. In a time full of a dark world, who would agree we live in a dark world? In a time full of a dark world, what are we called to be? We're called to be the wise who shine like the brightness of the heavens and lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. That's who we're called to be. In this time, we are called to be stars that shine in darkness. We are called to be people who don't blend in. Who knows the stars don't blend in? You walk out and you're like, oh, this is amazing. Oh, this is awesome. We're not called to blend in. We're called to stand out. I'm not saying we're better than anybody else, but we're supposed to stand out. That's who we're called to be. And what happens when we do that? When we do that, you lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. I just got a thing to say. After we give our life to Christ, why are we still on this planet? Why do we stay here? I mean, it just makes sense. Jesus, I give you my life. We're gone. We go to heaven. He doesn't do that, does he? Why does he leave us here? Here's why he leaves us here. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens. And those who lead many to righteousness like the stars. We are left here because we are supposed to make a difference here. We are left here because we're supposed to be light that shines. We are called to be the church, which doesn't mean sitting our rear end in a chair. It means living a life that stands out. Anybody out there? living a life that people see and that stands out forever. It says, but you, Daniel, you close up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. It says, many will go here and there to increase knowledge. I want to say this, many will go here and there. Okay, talking about signs of the end times. Many will go here and there. Did you know up to 200 years ago, like if you wanted to go to Europe, you know how long it would take you to get there? You had to get on a boat and travel for many times months. Do you know how long it takes you now? I could leave here, go get on a plane, and I could be in Europe in 8 to 10 hours or less. I could go on the other side of the world in half a day. Less than that. Why? Many are able to go here and there. What does that do? That allows the gospel to spread even more, even more. And then it says this, and an increase in knowledge. I don't know if you notice this. Our knowledge level as a people has grown over and over and over again. They said like it took like 200 to 300 years for knowledge to double. You know how long it takes now? 6 to 12 months for knowledge to double. The things that are happening. We're like, oh, I never knew. Things are happening like crazy. Why? Because I believe we're set up for the last 7 years. Look in Daniel chapter 12, verse 8. Everybody still with me? If you're still with me, wave your hand at me. I know you're not asleep. Wave your hand. Okay, there you go. Some of you didn't wave your hand. That means you're sleeping. Okay, here we go. This is Daniel. It says, I heard what they said, but I did not understand what they meant. I mean, how many of you say that's me? That's like a husband verse. that's like husbands can put that verse on their refrigerator. I heard what you said, babe, but I didn't understand what you meant. Any guys with me out there? Any guys you can? Okay, you guys are just scared. Okay, okay, we'll keep going. I heard what you said. Just want to make you laugh to lighten things up. I heard what you said, but I didn't understand what you meant. So I asked, how will all this finally end, my Lord? What's going on? You've told me all this. And he said, go now, Daniel, for I have chosen to keep it a secret, sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified and cleansed and refined by these trials. Okay, what is in the end time? Here's what I'll say. One of the signs of the end times is revival. One of the signs of end times is a move of God and a revival. That's one of the big signs of the end time is revival. And people are like, well, we're not in that because we don't have revival. We're not living in revival. I would say you're incorrect. I would say as a country, we are not in revival, but we are called to be, and we are going to that place. Anybody with me? As a church, we're called to be, and we go in there. Who wants to go there with me? Go to revival. 21 days of prayer. We're going to seek the face of God. We're believing for breakthroughs in the year 2020. I'm believing for God to move in a big and amazing way. But here's what I'd say. We may say, oh, we're not in revival. Well, let me just challenge that with you. From the beginning of the year 2000 till now, more people have gotten saved, more people have given their life to Christ from the beginning of the year 2000 to 2019 than the 2,000 years before that after Christ died. More people have gotten saved in the last 20 years than in the 2,000 previous years. What's that called? Revival. If you go all around the world, God is moving in a huge way. You know where he's moving at the most? He moves at the most where there's the most fighting against him. Where people say, no, you can't do that. Do you know where revival's happening? Revival's happening in places like China where you can die for the cause of Christ. In all these different countries where if you love Jesus, there's a chance you could die, revival is happening. I believe one of the reasons why our country's not in revival is because we're uncomfortable. But here's what I know is happening, and if you haven't seen our culture, it is happening. Comfortable is changing. We're now, to be a follower of Jesus, to even say Jesus to many people, if you just say the name Jesus, they see that as offensive. Yes, they do. It's time to get offended. It's time to stand up for for the light. It's time to be light in a dark world. Everybody got me? And we don't hide Jesus. We display Jesus even more. In a world that doesn't receive him, what happens? Revival happens. Look in the book of Acts. When did revival happen? When persecution came. Persecution, when it comes, what do? We embrace it and we go to another level. And here's what I want to say. That's who we're called to be. That's where we're called to go. Let's keep reading. But the wicked will continue in their wickedness, and none of them will understand. Only those who are wise will know what it means. From the time the daily sacrifice is stopped and the sacrilegious objects that cause desecration is set to be worshipped, the temple, it says it will be 1,290 days. Once again, talking about the 3.5 years. It says, blessed are those who are wait until the end of the days. It says, as for you, go your way until the end. Go your way until the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days, you will rise again to receive an inheritance set ahead of you. Here's what. Whether that 7 years is coming up or not, we are called to have harvest. And we are called to be people who are what? Who are stars that shine in the heaven. I want to read this to you. In 2 Peter chapter 3, it's in your notes, verse 10. It says, but the day of the Lord will come how? Like a thief in the night. Not going to expect it. It says, the heavens will disappear with a roar, the elements will be destroyed by the fire, and the earth and the everlasting in it will be laid bare. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, look at this. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, here's the question I want us to look at. What kind of people ought you to be? When all this is getting ready to happen, what kind of people should we be? Then he answers his own question. You ought to live holy and godly lives. What does holy mean? Doesn't mean better than anybody else. What does holy mean? Set apart. Set apart. We are to live holy, set apart lives. What does the Bible say? We are in this world, but we're not of this world. We need to make a decision. I'm going to live a life that's different. I'm going to live a life that's set apart. I'm not called to blend in. Everybody get this. We are not called to blend in. We are called to stand out. Where in our lives have we made compromise? Where now instead of standing out, we blend in. Let's find those places and say, you know what, I'm going to change that. That's not going to be who I am. That's not who I'm called to be. I'm not called to blend in. I'm called to stand out. I'm called to be a star in the sky. And so I have to look and I have to say, what in me needs to change so I can be a star in the sky, so I stand out. Not so I'm better, but just so I am different. You ought to live holy in this world, but not of this world. As you look forward to the day of God, okay, look at this part. As you look forward to the day of God and speed, it's coming. And speed, it's coming. What does that even mean? It means we have a part to play when Christ returns. What can we do? Speed is coming. How do we speed is coming? You get more people to come to know Christ. Do you know, I think the only thing that, I can just see Jesus. Hey, God, I'm ready. Send me. He's ready to go. And God's like, okay. No, wait. I think Judy's going to get saved. No, don't go yet. Don't. What keeps God from doing that? God's incredible love for people. Amen. So what are we called to do? Reach more people. Have our life make a bigger difference. What happens when we do that? Speed is coming. Lord, we're bringing in more people. There shouldn't be an empty chair in this place. Why? Because we're doing our job. Woo, anybody with me? And speed is coming, and we're going to be light that shines to a world. That's who we're called to be. We're called to be people whose speed is coming. So how do we live in the midst of this? How do we live? I want us to walk away with this. I want to always give you something to walk away with. I know we went really deep today, and I know we talked about the 7 that hasn't happened yet. I don't know when it's going to happen. Here's what I know. We live every day like it's going to happen tomorrow. Everybody got that? We live every day like it's going to happen tomorrow. So how are we to live? If you're taking notes, you can write this down. Follow God, not culture. How are we to live in these times? We follow God, not culture. We don't follow what culture says. Culture will always try to pull us in. Culture will always try to make us look like everybody else. Follow God, not culture. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 23, it says, may your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. You know what? I'm going to stand out. I'm going to stand apart. I'm going to follow God. I'm not going to follow culture. I'm not going to blend in. I'm going to be who I'm called to be. Everybody grab this. And here's another thing I would say. Being who we're called to be, don't keep it silent. That went over so good. Being who we're called to be, we don't keep it silent. We're loud with it. We make a decision. I'm studying the book of Acts also. It's one of my favorite. When I read the book of Acts, it brings me alive. And I read it over and over again. What I see in them is this crazy boldness that whenever they were told to shut up, they were louder. Whenever they got beaten, they celebrated getting beat. I sat there and go, that's what it means to be a follower of Christ. I remember when I first got saved, I prayed this crazy, stupid prayer that was really pretty cool because I was reading the book of Acts, and I got on my knees and I said, God, it would be such an honor to die for you. And then I said, what did I just say? What did I just say? But I'm reading these guys and these women who are giving their life, and I'm thinking, that's what we're supposed to do. It would be an honor to die for you, but you know what I'm called to do? I'm called to live for you. And if the dying happens, it happens. To live is Christ. To die is gain. Here's what we do. I live for him. That's what we do with follow God. We don't follow culture. And maybe places where you've made compromise, make changes to get back to where you're supposed. I remember one of my kids, so proud of him. He was with some friends watching a movie, and the movie wasn't good. And you know what he did? He got up and he left the movie. Got up and left the movie because it wasn't something he wanted something. And some of his friends got up and they went out with him. They might not have went out if it wasn't for him. What if we stood up? Everybody get this. Young people, what if you stood up in a world full of darkness? Older people, what if you stood up in a world, everybody, what if we stand up in a world full of darkness? Here's what I'll say. People will follow. People will follow courage. Here's the next one. Be ready for Christ's return. We live every day ready. We live every day ready. Every day ready for his. Matthew chapter 24, verse 42. It says this, Matthew 24, 42. It says, therefore keep watch because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. Every day we make a decision. I'm going to follow Jesus every day. I'm going to live for him every day. There are no days off. I'm going to live for Christ's return. And what am I going to do living for Christ's return? I'm taking as many people as I can with me. Okay. You may not get on a plane to go on a mission trip. Go on a mission trip to Walmart. Go on a mission trip to work. Go on a mission trip to school. Make a decision. I'm living every day. I'm living every day for Christ's return. Here's the last one. We'll close with this. Follow God, not culture. Be ready for Christ's return. Here's the last one. Make the most of this life. Make the most of this life. We have one chance. We have one opportunity to live this life. And we talked about this earlier. Our days are numbered. Our days are numbered. What if we take advantage of every day we have on this earth? Okay. What if we take advantage of every day we have on this earth with the viewpoint of eternity? See, we live most of our life with the viewpoint of what we want, what we have to have, what we need, with our bills, with our blah, 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 all these different things. What if we lived our life with the viewpoint of eternity and said, I'm going to live my life and I'm going to make the most of my life. And at the end of my life, here's the thing. At the end of my life, is it going to matter what kind of car I drove or what kind of house I lived in? Is that going to matter the most? Or is my life going to matter for eternity? Is it going to matter how many people I am bringing with me on this trip? That's what we're called to do. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. It says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Look at making the most of every opportunity. Making the most of every opportunity. Guess what tomorrow is? A new opportunity. Guess what the next day is? A new opportunity. I'm gonna make the most of every opportunity, which is every day that I have. I'm gonna make the most of every opportunity. How do I make I'm gonna give you some advice. How do I make the most of every opportunity? Tomorrow's an opportunity. To the rest of the days, how do I make the most? I fill myself up. Because if I'm not full, I don't have much to give out. How do I let light shine through me? I get connected to the light. If some of you don't have any light in you, look where you're plugged in. Because maybe you're plugged into the wrong place or maybe you're not plugged in at all. But if I want to make a difference, I will plug into the right thing and then light will shine and life will come out of me that will reach the world. I make an opportunity. What if we get up in the morning and we say, I'm going to live full. We spend time in his presence. Because what happens when we're full? We have more to give out. And so I get full and I give out. And at lunchtime, I'm getting empty again because I've given out so much. Guess what I do? I go and I get full again, spending time in his presence. Then I give out more. And we live on this cycle of getting full and giving out and getting full and giving out. Because our life is called to make a difference. Making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. What is his will? His will is for our life to make a difference. And whether that 7 years is right around the corner or whether it's a long way from now, here's what I know. We live in a time where it is someone's end time. And we live in a day where we have a number of days that we are called to use to make a difference. Everybody close your eyes all around the room. Who wants to make a difference? All across the room. Who wants to make a difference? Lift up your hands if that's you. You say, I want my life to make a difference. I want my life to make a difference. Lift them up right now all around the room. Okay, those of you who want, stand up on your feet. You say, I want my life to make a difference. Let's all stand up. We're going to pray. We're going to close in prayer because what do we want? I want my life to make a difference. I want to be a light that shines in a dark world. Who wants to be stars in the sky? Lift up your hands toward heaven. Lord, that's our cry to you right now. God, we ask you, in the middle of a world full of darkness, not to follow darkness, but to get plugged into the light. God, we ask that we would stand out and not blend in. God, we ask that in a world that we live in, that needs light, that we would be the light because we are connected to the light. We are a reflection of your light. I pray for you to put a fire in us to want to be closer to you so we can reflect you day after day after day. God, you're not calling us to be perfect. Even when you say be holy, it means be set apart, be different. That's who we are called to be, and help us to be that. Lord, let us see the world we live in. Let us see the times we live in, and let us live life different, making every day count. God, use us. Everybody say that. God, use me. Use me tomorrow, the next day, and for the rest of my life. I am surrendered to you. Let me be a star that will shine for the world to see. In Jesus' name. Amen. Let's go be stars for the world to see. Who's with me? Let's go be stars for the world to see. Lord, give us an amazing week. We thank you for your blessings. We thank you for your love. And use us in Jesus' name. Have a blessed week. Common Ground.